Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Photoshop/digital imaging for the fall semester of 2021. Today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish up lesson 7, which talks about using typography in Photoshop. So looking directly at the before and after images now that or files that they provided for us. In the textbook, let's go over some of the features that maybe we have or haven't covered before that we're going to talk about today. Start with, let's look around the outside. We're going to see that there are rulers that are available. It's easy enough to bring rulers up or to hide them. And then in order to use, for example, these guidelines, these light blue guidelines, you need rulers visible to do that. They're useful for aligning the type or aligning objects with one another. So that will be another feature. Another tool that they have provided for us is a little notepad here. If we double click on the notes here, you'll notice that they have given us the text that we need to input into our magazine cover here. And so we'll go ahead and we'll talk about how to create notes to do that. And yeah, the notepad is over here to the right. That's what this is right here. Okay. How we can use vertical text versus the traditional horizontal to wrap type along a path. That will be useful to you in a number of occasions. In addition to that, using text as a layer mask, and that's what they've done. We've taken and we have this image of a board, digital board, what do you call it, electronic board, that is used to place inside the editable text in here. So that's very easy to do, but can be really, really useful. And then in addition to that, to the text, especially in the masthead here, they have added an effects layer. So that effects layer in this particular case is bevel, so that it makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So let's go ahead and get started with our new one over here, our start file. I'll move my face over here. And one of the things that I like to do is to help me determine the center of my file is to bring up rulers. And it's quite easy. If I click and I make sure that this file is selected, if you hit Command R or Control R on the PC, that makes the rulers visible or it hides them. You can also go under the View menu here and you'll see that. You'll notice that rulers is checked, Command R. And this is true for any particular panel that you may or may not want to see. So now that we have rulers visible, I can zoom in a little bit so I can see the rulers a little bit more. And the file size for this, the physical size is 8.5 by 10 and a half. So that's the size of our magazine. Well, I want to know right down the middle of my file where the center is. So what I can do is I can click on the left-hand ruler and drag out and find my 4 1/4 mark. So that will be the center. Then I also want to find, if we look at our finished version here, they've used a couple of other rulers here. They have, or guidelines rather. They have one down here at the 2-inch mark. So from the top ruler, I'll click and I'll drag and I'll pull it down to 2 inches so that we know about where to start our text over here that will be flush right. So let's start at the top. I'm not going to go in order the book has gone here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the text tool, which is down here. And I'm just going to click in the center here. But I'm going to make sure that I have text centered visible. I also want Myriad Pro, and I want it, that's the default. typically what it defaults to. And I want semi-bold. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in here 144 point. I think that's the size that they used. We'll see in a minute. And if it's not the right size, then we'll redo it. So now I can click anywhere, really. It's not that important where I put it. It puts in the Greeking, and now I'll just put caps lock on and write digital. And that looks about right. Okay, did I spell it right? There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the move tool, or I could have hit the return key and I can move it up. Now, if I want to know exactly how this is centered, it helps me if I put in Command T for transform, and you'll notice that the little marks along the top here enable me to, those little, they're not anchor points, but little adjustment handles where the center of it is. I think that looks right, but if I'm not sure, I'll go ahead and the thing that's nice about this is you can always go back and edit it. So if I go back with a text tool and I highlight it and I select all, I have semi-bold here. So maybe it's another one. I'm going to leave semi-bold for right now. We'll notice that it stretched out a little bit. So if you recall from my last lecture, what we can do is we can use tracking for that. So what I can do is I can either bring up the under window, I can bring up the, where are we here? Let's see, I want to bring up the character panel. Character right here. And I can pull this over like so. Or I can use the character panel over here. I kind of like old school instead of the properties panel over to the right. I like it because I can move it where it needs to be. And then I can come over here and here's the tracking. And I can click and I can drag and I can pull it out a little bit so that it stretches it out. And, I'm limited on my height, but it stretches it out a little bit so I can better utilize the height that I have. Now, if I don't like the height of it, I can go ahead and shrink it a little bit. Let's go ahead and shrink that just a little bit. So it's, maybe it was 124 or something that they had. So I'm going to try 124 point. That looks closer to the right size. And then I'm going to come back, and when you change the height, it obviously changes the your need for changing the tracking. So I'm going to come back to the tracking again, and it's set to 90, and I'll stretch it out a bit more. So it's really, pretty easy, just using the spinner, figuring out what your needs are. So the next step is, let me go ahead and fix this. So I'll check the checkbox. And we're going to move this too, because you can see that in the finished version, the text is behind the character that we have, or the person, or portrait. So what I can do is I can just simply go to layers and I can move it down. Now it's beneath it. Now what I want to do is I want to take the board here and I want to put it inside this particular file. So I'm going to use the move tool, click and drag until it goes up to our start file, drag it down and release. And there it is. Now I had the digital, the text layer selected, and that's why it's immediately above it now. And that's what you need. If you're going to use text as a layer mask, it needs to be beneath whatever you want it to mask. Then the next thing that you do is you hold down the Option or Alt key if you're on the PC and move the cursor between the two layers. Click, and you'll notice that it's inside. You can always select either one and edit them. You can change the font. If you discover that you've made a typo, you can edit that. make that change. If you want to scale the image that's behind it, you can always do that. And now the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and add the bevel to that. So make sure that I have the text layer selected. Go to Effects. And what we're going to do is we're going to add bevel and emboss. And I don't know that I'll stick directly to what they have done. But again, you can see that I have a 3D effect. You can adjust the depth from here. You can select whether you want inner bevel, you want outer bevel. There's a whole bunch of settings that you should probably play with just to see what works. You can change the size from here, make it a little bit less, a little bit more. You can soften it. It's fun to play with these. So that's what I would do. There's just lots of bells and whistles and lots of tools to work with to get the desired look that you're going for. And it's important to remember that these layer effects are editable. You can always turn them off. You can always turn them back on, and you can always go back and double click on it, and it brings back that dialog box for the layer style, and you can go back and change it. So none of these features are that I've shown you so far are permanent. They're all non-destructive, which is really very nice. Now you can see that I have accidentally maybe moved the text a little bit too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it up. So make sure that I have the right file selected. That would be helpful. And what I want to do is I want to, I don't know that they specify this in the book, but I'm going to select both of these layers by holding down the Shift key. You can also use the Command or Control key, and I'm going to link the two together so that when I move one, the other moves, and I can move it up, hold down the Shift key and drag it up a little bit like so, and release, and it should go ahead and come on. There we go. There is a bit of lag, but this effect should come back. Notice that it's gone away. Let's turn it off. Let's turn it back on. There we go. So it's come back. So that's one of the first things that we're doing here. I find that to be a really important tool. We can also, let's go ahead and work on this, which is a fun, I'll go ahead and close the character panel, but have the text follow a path. So what you want to do is to follow a path, what we're going to do is we're going to use some of the vector components, the vector tools that they have over here. They're from the pen tool on down. So if you notice that the pen tool, text tool, the move tool, or the direct selection tool, I should say, as well as the rectangle tool, all of these are vector components to Photoshop. For any of you who have worked with Illustrator, that's precisely what this is here, kind of a pared down version. My feeling is that Illustrator does a much superior job. So I would encourage you to, if you're going to work with vector components, and that's actually part of our next lesson in lesson 8, is that you stick with Illustrator. It does a superior job. But let me show you what we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Move over here, and then I'm going to select the pen tool. And this will be the subject of our next lesson here. So what I want to do is I want to click and I want to drag. But before I did that, I should have noted, let me go ahead and undo that. Because when you use vector components, you can create a shape or you can create a path. In this particular instance, we don't want a shape, we want a path. So it's just a Bezier curve that we'll use to attach the text to it. So I'm going to click and drag to pull out the handles that allow it to curve. And then I'm going to go to the next, there we go, next point, and that curves down. And then I'm going to click again over here, and then that brings it back up. So we have our nice little S curve here. If we want to edit the curve, then what we need to do is we need to switch from the pen tool to either the path selection tool, which isn't what we want, but we want the direct selection tool. That allows me to move one of the anchor points, and it allows me to pull and push on the handles to manipulate those to get them to follow the precise path that I want. These can be edited at any time. So I'll click here, I'm going to drag so it's a little bit more even. So we get what we're going for here. Then I'm going to go ahead and go back so that I just see the path. I don't need to see the anchor points or the handles. But now I'm ready to use the text tool. And I believe the size that we want. I don't know if it's 15 point or not, because remember I have this set to 124 point, but I'm going to go down to about 15 points. Okay. No, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back and let's bring that down. So I have digital selected. So that was a mistake on my part. I'm going to go ahead now and select on the model so that when I begin to create a new text layer, it will be not the one that I had selected, but a brand new one. And I also want this to be centered. And when I move over the path, it will be difficult for you to see on my video, but you'll see that on the little I-beam cursor, there's a little curved line, which means that it's going to, when I click, it's going to connect to that path. So when I click, you can see now it went back to that 124 point. I'm going to go back to maybe 15 point. That's more to the liking. Now I'm going to go ahead and say what's new with music. I guess it's probably a little bit smaller, but I didn't want to do that. Let's go back again. So here we go. You can see that it's following the path. New with music. And it's a little bit too big. Or even if it isn't, I can go back and I can highlight this like so. Say select all, Command A, and we can make it a little bit smaller until it fits. Now you'll notice that I didn't click the exact center. So now what I need to do to get this to slide over, and it's like running on rails, is that I can go back and I can use the selection tool here. When I have the I-beam cursor, notice that I can pull this over now. So it slides across the path. That I want. There we go. Let's go back to the text. And let's go back here and select. Let me select the text again. And also I have a few other things that I need to change here. So I'm going to click and select all. I don't want it to be 190. I'm just going to go back to the previous setting. There you go. What's new with music? And we should be able to move this back a little bit. And if we don't, I don't know if I put a question mark after that or not. Let's go ahead and click. And I can also click the whole thing, say select all. And we're going to switch from black to white. There we go. Click on the end, put a question mark. And so we've got that. That's working pretty good. Now I can use the move tool, not the direct selection tool, but our path selection tool here. And this will should enable me to move, or let's select the text itself. And I don't want to move that. I didn't want to do that. I want the move tool here. So let me select the path. And I'm going to use the transform tool now. So Command T for transform. And I can rotate it a little bit like so. So we have it going up. Come on. Let's go ahead and click OK. It moves, and now I'm going to hit the move tool, and let's move the whole thing over just a little bit in front of our mouth. Now, so we don't have to do this again. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. And so I'll go ahead on brand new layer, make a copy of it, and I'll move it down a little bit like so. And then again, Command T to transform. And we'll rotate it a little bit like so, move it into position. And you can tell that this is probably a little bit too big. That's okay for our purposes right now. Okay, go ahead and select OK, make a copy of that again. And what I can also do if I want to shrink everything is that I can link these three layers together, and I can use the transform and I can shrink it that way too. So let's try that just for the heck of it. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, make a copy, move it down a little bit, and let's go ahead and hit Command T to transform and rotate again. So I'm rotating the whole kit and caboodle here. That looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and move again, move it into position like so. Now I'm going to link these three layers together so I can turn off caps lock, hold down the shift key, select all three of these, link them together, and see that they're all linked, and I can go ahead and hit Command T. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to hold down the Option and the shift key, and I'm going to shrink everything down just a little bit to get it to a more appropriate size. Move it into position, and I'm good to go. Now I can go ahead and click the checkbox and fix it. Now all we have to do is we have to use, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's use our notes. So let's bring up notes from over here. And the trend issue. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off and pull it down here so I can see where we're supposed to put these guys. We also have volume 9 that we have to put, but let's go ahead and put this text in here. I'm going to go ahead and select the text tool over here. And I want to see, I guess they use an entire text box. So let's do that. I have the center and I have the right edge here, and that's not a bad way to go. Because remember when we were using the text tool the other day, it will continue along the same line until you hit the return key. But when you create a text box in advance, then what you need to do, let's go ahead and click OK. And let's go ahead and click over here. And I'm going to create my text box. I'm just using guides to do that. Now I can click with the text tool here and click and drag to make the box like so. Okay. And it's put in some gibberish. Now what I want to do is I'm going to select all of this. I hope that I can select it all. No, I got to go ahead and I'll check it. I'm going to select all of this. And I'm going to copy it, Command C to copy. Come back over here, highlight it all, and I'm going to paste. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to make it all flush right. Make sure that it's all flush right. So I'm selecting it all. Make sure that it's all flush right. There we go. Now I need to specify for the, the trend issue. So I'll select each one of these individually. Now each line. And let's go ahead and bump it up in size until we get the right size here. Okay, and it should all be white. That looks about right. At 67, I'll just say 60 point. And instead of semi-bold, let's go ahead and make it bold. And that looks right. And now because we want trend and no other word to be green, I just simply highlight it, click on the text, the color, And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move outside. And I'm going to click in here just to pick a nice green. And maybe one a little bit darker. Not that dark. You can pick colors from wherever you like. That works pretty good. It's a little bit brighter and lighter than theirs, but I don't care. Okay. Now what we're going to do is the same thing for these guys. We're going to make them a little bit larger. I think all of these are about the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and use the spinner and increase the size a little bit here. Maybe 24 point would be a good size for these guys. So that I've enlarged them all, I highlight what I want to make bold, what's hot. That's currently semi-bold. I want it to be bold. And then we want this to be what's not. I want it to be bold. And I want the rest of it to be a lighter typeface. So I'll go ahead and once that's highlighted down here, instead of semi-bold, we'll just make it regular. And that should do the job. Okay, so we're pretty much done. If I want to get rid of that little note, I can go ahead and delete it like so. Whoops, let's go ahead and fix the text first. There we go, and I can delete that note. Yes, you want to delete the note. Sure, now it's gone. Typically when you have notes, I don't use them. But if you're working with a group, or if you're working for a client and the client maybe has an art director, the art director will very possibly leave notes for you to say that I want to change the green. You know, this is too bright. I want it darker. I want the type to be bigger, smaller. I want a different font, you name it. They'll generally put those kinds of notes in there. Notice, I'm just noticing too, you'll see that, let me go ahead and put this back over here. Hide this down here. That the leading for the trend issue, by leaving it default, and it is, I've left it here, there's quite a bit of space between the lines. I don't like that. I like what they have done. So I highlight those 3 lines. And I'm going to go ahead and use the properties panel now. And with the text layer here, what we want to do is we want to make sure that under the leading here, I'm just going to move it up a little bit. And you can see how it's tightening up just between those 3 lines, the amount of space between them. And, you know, early on when you're working with this, do something that looks about right. And then you can go back up and you can see, well, what have I done here? Well, instead of 47, I know when using type fairly often that maybe 48 point would be a better setting for that, or less. Now I can click off of this and we're ready to save and we're done. That's all there is to it. That's using type. Moving on different layers. We've done a lot of things now. We've added guidelines. We've created a box so that we can copy, paste, and take whatever text was applied. It was provided for us in the in notes and apply that. We've applied text to a path. That's very nice. What else have we got here? Now you'll notice that I made this too small. We can come back with that. Let's go back to that. When I select one layer, notice all 3 are linked. So if I hit Command T, I can go ahead and I can enlarge it again. It's really kind of nice, you know, until you get, and that could be in the notes that an art director provides you, until you get something that's to their satisfaction. So that's all I have for today. I apologize for the other day when my computer was not working properly. Oh, I did forget one thing. We have volume here. So let me start at the top. And I need to, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a little rectangular box. So I want the shape to be here. I'm going to pick a different color here. I want it to be a light yellow. So let's pick in pastels here. Maybe this one would work pretty well. Okay, so that'll be our color. Now let's go ahead. Yeah, I want that to be the fill color. And now I'll go ahead over here and I'm going to make sure now that instead of path, I want it to be shape. So I did forget something here. So I'm going to click and drag like so until I like that. And that's pretty good color. What we can also do is we can change the opacity of it a little bit, like so. Let's go ahead and drop that down to maybe 60. And then click OK. Probably be a little bit lighter. Now we're going to use the text again. At this time with the text, this is the one thing that I forgot to do, is that we want to use vertical type. Now I'm going to use the 15, and I don't want that to be selected. So let's deselect. And you can see that it says lorem ipsum, and I just want volume. I want all caps, VOL space 9. Okay, and it's in black. So now we can go ahead and we can select with the move tool, and we can move this over like so, get it into position. And if you want to nudge it at any time, you can always go ahead and with the move tool, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard until it's to your liking. I'm going to go back and select the rectangle again, and to make it more compatible with the version that they've provided in the book, adjust the opacity a little bit, because I'm sure I'm not using the same color that they are. In fact, I know I'm not, but that's okay. So that's it. Much shorter demonstration than the other day, and this one I will post for all of you in Art 192 class. Make it available for you so that you're not afraid to use text, because as soon as you're done with the postcard assignment, which you should use a little bit of text, we're going to jump into the movie poster, and that you will be using text more extensively for the title, for the credits, for maybe some reviews. A variety of things can be used. So now the last step would be to save this, and we'd be all done, and we're set to go. So that's it. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to save this for later, and I'll post it today, and hopefully this will be helpful for you guys for your lesson 7. And on Wednesday, tomorrow, I'm recording this on Tuesday, we'll be working with lesson 8, which works extensively with the vector components, but not type. We'll be using the pen tool, and we'll be using shapes and so on and so forth. We'll be using these down here. That's it. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll pause my recording and see all of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.